on this week's episode of The Chris and Andre Show. Sports.
So the real reason we were switching to sports was supposed to be a talk about Antonio Brown.
What happened with kid?
So for those of you that weren't paying attention this weekend, I guess basically I don't know what he quit, but
he quit and he got fired.
but they have not released him from the team. He's still technically on the roster.
Oh, he's done, dude.
Right. But I feel like basic background, the Buccaneers were playing the Jets this past weekend. At one point, Bruce Arians told Antonio Brown to go back in the game, like, hey, you need to go back in. You know, we're calling this play. And he was like, no, I'm good. And he was like, well, you either go back in the game or you get the fuck out of here because that's it. And he was like, all right, well, then I'm going to get the fuck out of here. And so he took off his jersey, took off his pads, he took off his undershirt, took off his gloves, and left. There is something wrong with Antonio Brown. And I don't mean this like jokingly. Like, I think there's something seriously wrong in his head, and I think that he needs some serious help. And I think that he has been kind of enabled by these different teams in the NFL that have said he's got talent, so we're just going to bring him in. And I'm not saying that like somebody needs to tell him to do this. I think he needs to, want this for himself to get help. But these are not the actions and the behaviors of somebody who is, I think, all there upstairs. And I don't think that it's just like a greed or a narcissistic behavior. Like, I think in my mind, looking at this goes well beyond this. And that's where I have a little bit of concern just about like some of the conversations that are being had around this, because there seems to be a lot of people who are really quick to take the easy, cheap shot and be like, look at this crazy idiot. And there's not enough people who are sitting there going like, this is not the same behavior we've seen from him. Like, this is not how he was the first several years in the league. Right? And I'm not saying that one specific hit is responsible for this, but there was a specific turning point with that Vontaze Burfict hit that he took in that Steelers game against the Bengals. And it was that game where like the Bengals team imploded. They were going to the playoffs. They lost to Steelers. And Vontaze Burfict, it was like helmet to helmet. I don't think it was malicious, but I mean, like, since that moment, Antonio Brown's behavior has been nothing short of erratic. And
well, there's enough evidence to prove that direct concussions over a period of time create behavioral changes and mental processing. So no, that's very very astute.
It's amazing to me that there isn't more of that conversation going on, and I'm sure part of it is the NFL's desire to acknowledge that CTE exists while also taking no responsibility for it whatsoever. But at the end of the day, like, I mean, there was the guy a few years ago, right? The Kansas City Chiefs linebacker that had, this horrible incident. He murdered his girlfriend and then drove to the facility and killed himself, right? These things are not like those.
They're not isolated.
Yeah, they're not isolated incidents, man. And this is a sport that I love to watch. Like, I love watching football, but it's becoming harder and harder to continue to support that type of barbaric. I mean, it's not even like barbaric, but just like.
No, you're just noticing the suffering, the silent suffering that's not being handled.
These guys.
Yeah, mental health is one thing, but
hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars to go play a sport, but then like when shit starts falling apart, there is nobody there to catch them, and it's just.
Yeah, they're expected to be taken care of by themselves because they pay so much.
But how like?
So we're gonna take a quick break, then we're gonna come back.
5 minutes later.
So I think that you're probably not wrong, and I don't want to pretend to know what's going on with Antonio Brown, but like,
and I don't either. Like, I'm not sitting here saying that that's 100% what is at the the cause of this, so that like he holds no personal responsibility for what's happened over the last few years, but it is just one of those, like, there seems to be a lot more people who are willing to just kind of point and laugh and say, look at this clown, and a lot less people kind of sitting there going like, this is weird.
Why would he do that?
Yeah, like why would he do this, right? Like, let's investigate that a little bit more and just have, I don't know. It's, to me, like, to some degree, it comes down to that, like, having more care for the people around you.
I think the part that kind of like blows my mind is that we look at athletes in a false sense of familiarity, right? Mm-hmm. And we assume because they have contracts or doing this and that everything's good. And then it takes something where you have like a head coach calling people, kicking people or some other crazy stuff. You're like, now everything else makes sense. Yeah. Whatever happened, the only thing I thought of when I saw the clip was like, something else had to happen to this kid for him to do that. Yeah. He may not want to talk about it. Yeah. But it was enough for him to say, no, I'm good. I'm not playing right now. And you're right. The people that are trying to shit on him, I mean, we don't know. Like,
well, I will say, I know this will probably, I know Tom Brady and what he had to say after the game. I don't feel like that was something that he was just like, oh, this is the right thing for me to say. Like, I do think that there's
push.
Like, I think that there was an element of Tom Brady that feels like, I think ultimately Tom's a good guy, like, and I think that he is looking at this much the way that we're kind of looking at it, is like, there's something like that's not right here. And ultimately, like, I want to be able to help Antonio if he wants the help and to help him get whatever he needs. But like, this is not somebody that we need, that society should just write off and say, well, that's a lost cause. Right.
Yeah. I think he he was pushed to do the right thing at that moment. And I listened to his comments. I'm like, all right, well, again, I can't speculate. And I think that's a lot of the damage that we do as a society right now. We speculate on what happened and why it happened without even asking the question.
To hear the rest, tune into this week's episode of The Chris and Andre Show.